The call came on a Tuesday morning. I was in my element, the place where my soul felt most at peace, my garden. The hose was in my hand, a gentle spray watering the tomato plants I'd nurtured from seed. The morning sun was warm on my back, and the only sounds were the bees humming in the lavender and the distant chirping of sparrows. This was the silence I had worked for, fought for 40 years. This was my heaven. Then the phone rang. I almost didn't answer it, reluctant to break the spell of the morning. But duty, a habit carved into me over a lifetime, made me wipe my hands on my apron and walk to the porch. Hello? Good morning. I'm calling to coordinate the final details for the Morales-Williams wedding decorations this Saturday. We have your address for the delivery of the floral arch and the arrangements for the ceremony site. Could you confirm the best access point for our truck? I froze. The world, so solid and familiar a moment before, tilted on its axis. I'm sorry, I said, my voice strangely thin. There must be a mistake. There's no wedding here. The florist on the other end sounded cheerfully confused. Oh! The system must be behind. We have a confirmed booking for David and Jessica Morales-Williams this Saturday, at this address. 200 guests. The order is for red roses and white carnations. 200. The number echoed in the silence of my mind, a death knell for my peace. 200 wedding invitations. With my farm's address. My own son. My own son and his beautiful, entitled fiance, Jessica. They had planned their wedding on my property, my sanctuary, the culmination of my life's work, without the simple, basic decency of asking me. The florist was still talking, her voice a distant buzz about centerpieces and ceremony arches. I managed to mumble something, a promise to call back, and hung up. My hands were trembling so violently I had to sit on the porch step, the rough, sun-warmed wood a stark anchor to reality. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, trapped bird. Humiliation washed over me first, hot and prickling. Then, as I sat there, the cool shade of the porch doing nothing to soothe the fire in my veins, it transformed. The humiliation curdled into something darker, something harder and more potent, a deep, seismic, and righteous anger. It was as if a dam had broken inside me, releasing a torrent of memories I usually kept carefully locked away. For 40 years, I was Hilda the housekeeper. I woke at 5 in the morning, my body aching before the day even began, to clean other people's homes. I scrubbed floors that weren't mine, my knees pressing into cold tile. I washed the fine clothes of women who looked through me as if I were part of the furniture. I ironed shirts for men who never greeted me, their eyes sliding over me as they discussed their important days. I remember the sting of a broken cup, the sharp, panicked fear as the porcelain shattered on the marble floor. The lady of the house had shrieked, not in concern, but in fury, her face contorted as she docked the cost from my week's pay. I remember the winter mornings, standing at a bus stop in the biting cold, my thin coat no match for the wind, praying the bus would be on time, knowing that if I was 5 minutes late, another sliver of my hard-earned money would be stolen for the crime of an unreliable public transit system. I endured the disrespect, the casual cruelties, the feeling of being less than human. All for a dream. A dream of a place of my own. Not just a house, but land. Space. Freedom. I saw the ad in the newspaper one evening, my body weary from a double shift. Farm, 74 acres, house included. The price was a number so vast it seemed like a fantasy. But something in my soul, something that had refused to be broken, whispered, "This is it. This is your chance." For 5 years, I lived like a ghost in my own life. I cleaned houses by day and offices by night. My hands became chapped and raw, my back a constant landscape of pain. I saved every penny, denying myself every small luxury. Each dollar tucked away was another brick in the foundation of my future, another square foot of that blessed earth. The day I finally held the deed in my hands, I was 65 years old. I stood in the empty living room of the white-painted farmhouse, the scent of old wood and promise filling my lungs. I traced the words with a trembling finger, Hilda Morales, sole owner. And I wept. I wept for the young woman who had scrubbed those floors, for the mother who had missed bedtimes, for all the years of silence and sacrifice. They had all led here. To this. To every brick, every tree, every inch of this sacred ground. My mango and avocado trees. My wide porch where I planned to drink my morning coffee in peace for the rest of my days. This was my kingdom. But from the moment David and Jessica first saw it, it became the family property. As if their name was on the deed. As if they had contributed anything more than their presence. They never offered a dime for maintenance. They never picked up a tool to fix the broken fence or prune the overgrown branches. But every weekend, like clockwork, their cars would kick up dust on my driveway. They arrived without warning, with packs of friends in tow. They would have loud parties that stretched into the early hours, leaving my quiet home littered with empty bottles and the stale smell of beer. And I, the fool, the mother so desperate for her son's love and approval, always played my part. "Mom, could you make something to eat?" More guests showed up than we expected, Jessica would say, flashing that brilliant, empty smile as she settled into my new hammock, the queen holding court. And I would obey. I would cook for 10, for 15 people who barely acknowledged me. I would clean up their mess, wash their dishes, swallow my pride with every crumb I swept from the floor. I told myself this was family. This was how bonds were built. How blind I had been. How systematically used. The florist's call was only the beginning. That week was a slow-motion nightmare. The phone became an instrument of torture. The caterer called about a 3-course menu. The DJ needed to discuss power outlets for his sound system. The photography company confirmed timings for family portraits. Each call was another twist of the knife, another confirmation of the breathtaking audacity of it all. My address, my home, was in the databases of every vendor in the city for an event I knew nothing about. By Wednesday, the anguish was a physical weight in my chest. I had to confront him. I called David, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. "Son, I need to talk to you urgently." "What's wrong, Mom?" "I'm busy at work." His voice was the same cold, dismissive tone he always used with me, a nuisance interrupting his important life. "It's about your wedding." The silence on the other end was long and damning. "What does my wedding have to do with you?" he finally asked, his voice dripping with a coldness that froze the blood in my veins. "David, all the vendors are calling me. You have my farm listed as the ceremony location." His response shattered what little was left of my heart. "Oh, Mom, I forgot to mention it to you, but don't worry. It's not going to cost you anything. We're paying for everything. We just need you to have the house ready on Saturday and prepare some food for the family that stays after the party." I forgot to mention it to you. 40 years of sacrifice. Reduced to a forgotten detail. 200 guests, David, I managed to whisper, my voice strangled. "Mom, don't exaggerate. It'll be like 150, max. And look on the bright side, you'll get to meet all of Jessica's family that you've never seen." The bright side. As if it were a privilege to have 200 strangers trample my lawn, use my bathrooms, and invade the sanctuary I had built. What if I have other plans for that day? I asked, the thread of my composure fraying. "What plans are you going to have, Mom? Your life is very quiet. Besides, this is important for us. It's our special day. Our special day. On my property. Without my consent." I hung up without another word. The tears came then, hot and fast, streaming down my wrinkled cheeks. But they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of a fury so profound it felt like a physical force, a volcano of indignation ready to erupt. They had crossed a line from which there was no return. But as I sat there in my kitchen, surrounded by the violated silence of my home, a new feeling began to push through the anger. It was cold, clear, and powerful. An idea. A glorious, terrible, perfect idea. If they wanted to use my property, they were going to find out, in the most unequivocal way possible, that it had an owner. Early Thursday morning, I dialed the number for Premium Corporate Events, the most exclusive event company in the city. "Good morning, ma'am. How can we help you?" a smooth, professional voice answered. "I want to rent my farm for a corporate event this Saturday," I said, my voice steady and firm. "It's urgent, but I'll pay whatever it takes." There was a moment of surprised silence. "This Saturday is very short notice, ma'am. Our corporate events require weeks of planning." "I'll pay double your normal fee," I interrupted. "It's a 74-acre, completely private farm with a colonial house, spacious gardens, and parking for 100 cars. Perfect for an important executive meeting." I could hear the shift in his tone immediately. Money, it seemed, spoke a universal language. "Could you give me more details about the event, Mrs. Morales?" "Hilda Morales." The event is a corporate celebration for international executives. I need maximum privacy and security. No external interruptions. We arranged for him to visit that afternoon. When Henry Smith, the owner, arrived, he couldn't hide his admiration as he walked my land. "Mrs. Morales, this place is absolutely spectacular," he said, his eyes taking in the manicured gardens, the sturdy farmhouse, the sprawling, pristine acres. "How long have you lived here?" 5 years, I replied, my chest swelling with pride. "I worked for 40 years to be able to buy it. It's my most precious treasure." His eyes gleamed with a businessman's appraisal. "This is worth a lot more than you think. You could make a fortune renting it for exclusive events." A fortune. The word echoed in my mind. We signed the contract that same afternoon. $5,000 for a single day's rental. $5,000 that my son and his fiance had never once offered to help with the property taxes or the upkeep, but which a stranger paid without hesitation. That night, I slept the deep, untroubled sleep of the righteous. I had taken back control. The storm arrived on Friday morning. The phone rang with hysterical insistence. It was Jessica. "Hilda! I need to talk to you urgently," she screamed, bypassing any greeting. "What's wrong, Jessica?" I asked, my voice dripping with a calm I didn't know I possessed. "The florist just called me. He says he can't get into the farm tomorrow because there's another event scheduled. He says someone else rented the place for the same day." "That must be a mistake, Jessica. They probably got the address confused." "It's not a mistake. The caterer and the sound company called, too. They all say the same thing, that there's a corporate event scheduled from 2 in the afternoon." I could perfectly imagine her face pale, her eyes wide with panicked fury. "How is it possible that you don't know anything about this? It's your farm." "Exactly, Jessica," I said softly. "It's my farm. You're finally understanding." An hour later, David's car came roaring up the driveway, kicking up a cloud of indignant dust. They marched towards the house, David with the stride of a conquering general, Jessica teetering on her heels, her face a mask of fury. "Mom, what the hell is going on here?" David demanded, storming into my living room as if he owned it. I stared at him, savoring the desperation in his eyes. For the first time, he needed something from me that I was not willing to give. "I don't understand what you mean, son. Don't act like you don't know. All the vendors say there's another event tomorrow, a corporate event that's preventing them from doing our wedding." I let the silence hang for a moment, then said, with devastating simplicity, "Oh, yes. It's true. I rented the farm for tomorrow." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. They stared at me, their mouths agape, as if I had just sprouted a second head. "What did you say?" Jessica whispered, her voice hollow. "I said I rented my farm for a corporate event tomorrow, Saturday. A very important company offered me a considerable sum to use the place, and I accepted. But our wedding is tomorrow," David yelled, his face flushing a dangerous crimson. "We sent out 200 invitations. People have already RSVP'd." "Well," I replied, my calm a stark contrast to his rage, "you should have consulted me before sending out invitations with my address on them. This is my property, David. Not yours, not Jessica's, not the family's. And I decide what happens here and when." The confrontation that followed was ugly. They pleaded, they yelled, they threatened. They offered me money, $10,000, $20,000, pulled from their honeymoon and house fund. They played the family card, the most important day card, and finally, the lowest card in the deck. Jessica, her voice trembling with venom, said, "If you ruin our special day, I swear you'll never see your grandchildren again." The threat, meant to shatter me, barely made a dent. I was armored in 40 years of righteousness. I showed them the door. As their car sped away, I sat on my porch and did not cry. I felt a profound, liberating relief. The battle lines were drawn. Saturday dawned. I put on my finest wine-colored dress and my mother's pearl earrings. I was not Hilda the housekeeper today. I was Hilda Morales, landowner and businesswoman. The chaos began mid-morning. The wedding vendors started to arrive, only to be met by the private corporate event signs Henry had erected. The florist, the caterer, the DJ, one by one, they came to me, confused and anxious. I directed them all to the bride and groom. Then, at noon, Henry's team arrived. Like a well-drilled army, they transformed my garden into an elegant corporate retreat. Round tables with white linens, a presentation stage, sophisticated centerpieces. It was beautiful, and it was mine. The wedding guests began to arrive next. A parade of elegant cars, families in their finest, all following the directions on the invitations that led them to my gate. I sat on my porch, a queen on her throne, and watched the confusion unfold. I politely informed the bewildered guests that they would have to speak with the bride and groom. At 2 o'clock sharp, the executives arrived, 50 men and women in sharp business attire, treating me with a respect my own family had forgotten. "Mrs. Morales, thank you for allowing us to use your beautiful property," the CEO said, shaking my hand. And then, the moment I had been waiting for. The wedding party arrived. A caravan of white cars, decked with ribbons. David leapt out, handsome in his tuxedo, his face a mask of panic. Jessica emerged, a vision in ivory silk, her beauty instantly marred by the look of absolute horror as she saw the executives mingling where her wedding altar should have been. "Mom!" David yelled, storming towards the porch. "Get out here immediately! You have to stop this right now. You have to kick these people out." I rose slowly, smoothing my dress. "Good afternoon, David. You look very elegant. This is no time for jokes, Mom. There are 100 guests waiting outside." "What a shame," I replied. "You should have thought about that before using my property without my consent." The scene descended into desperation. They begged. They offered money again. They invoked God and family. It was then that Father Thomas, the officiating priest, arrived. He was a calm, wise presence in the storm. He listened to my story, to the whole sordid tale of 40 years of work and 5 years of disrespect. "I understand your pain, Hilda," he said. "But I also understand that there are 200 innocent people here. Perhaps we can find a compromise?" It was a reasonable request. But a compromise would only rescue them from the consequences of their actions. It would teach them nothing. Then, an idea, brilliant and complete, formed in my mind. I called Henry over. "How much time would your clients need to finish if we offered them a discount to speed up the process?" A deal was struck. The executives, fascinated by the drama, agreed to conclude by 4:30 p.m. I turned to David and Jessica, who were watching me with a mixture of hope and terror. "Here is my proposal," I announced, my voice ringing with authority. "The ceremony will be held here, after 4:30. Under my conditions." I laid them out. First, from this day forward, any use of my property required 1 month's advance consultation. Second, they would pay me $1,000 a month in rent for weekend use, plus all maintenance. Third, during today's ceremony, I would be publicly recognized as the owner and hostess. And the fourth condition, I said, my eyes locking with theirs. During the toast, I will explain to all your guests the complete story of how this wedding came to be. How 200 invitations were sent without the owner's knowledge. How a wedding was planned without my consent. And how it was almost cancelled because no one thought to ask my permission. The horror on their faces was a masterpiece. Public humiliation was a price they had never considered. They tried to negotiate, but I stood firm. It was all my conditions, or no wedding. Finally, broken and desperate, they agreed. At 5:30 that evening, under the golden light of the setting sun, my son married his wife beneath my favorite mango tree. The corporate executives, now honored guests, mingled with the wedding party. It was a strange, beautiful, and surreal scene. When the vows were exchanged and the kiss was shared, the applause was thunderous. Then, Henry handed me the microphone. I stood before the 200 guests, my heart steady, my voice clear. "Good evening, everyone. I am Hilda Morales, David's mother, and the owner of this beautiful farm." I paused, letting the warm applause settle. "I want to thank you all for joining us on this very special day, although I must confess that I found out there would be a wedding here in the exact same way you did, by invitation." A confused murmur rippled through the crowd. I told them everything. The 40 years of scrubbing floors. The dream of this land. The 5 years of being treated as a housekeeper in my own home. The florist's call. The 200 invitations. My decision to rent the farm to teach my son a lesson in respect. The silence was absolute. You could hear the leaves rustling in the twilight breeze. When I found out what had happened, I continued, my voice strong, I made a decision. I rented my farm for a corporate event on the same day as the wedding to teach my son and daughter-in-law that this property has an owner, and that owner is me. I looked at David and Jessica, their faces flushed with shame. But at the end of the day, family love is stronger than hurt pride. And although it was necessary to go to this extreme to get the respect I deserve, here we are, celebrating David and Jessica's love. In my house. On my terms. I raised my glass. So I toast to the bride and groom, who today learned that respect for parents is not optional, that consideration for others is fundamental, and that mothers also have rights and feelings. To David and Jessica, may they begin their marriage by understanding the value of mutual respect. The applause that followed was not just polite, it was filled with admiration and respect. David came to me, tears in his eyes, and hugged me. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." 6 months have passed. The dust has long since settled, and my life is now something I could never have imagined. My farm is a thriving business. Henry and I have an exclusive contract, and most weekends, my land is filled with the sounds of celebrations I am paid handsomely to host. The financial independence is a comfort I have never known. But the real change is in my family. David and Jessica have kept their word. The $1,000 rent appears in my account like clockwork every month. They call weeks in advance to ask, politely, if a date is available. When they visit, Jessica insists on washing the dishes. "You worked enough preparing the meal, Hilda. We'll clean up." I am no longer the invisible housekeeper. I am the matriarch. I am respected. The story of the wedding that almost wasn't has become a local legend. Women stop me in the market to tell me I gave them the courage to set boundaries. Father Thomas even uses it in his sermons on honoring thy father and mother. Every evening, I sit on my porch with a cup of coffee, looking out at my land. The mango trees sway in the twilight, and the scent of my flowers fills the air. This is the peace I worked for. This is the respect I earned. At 70 years old, I learned the most important lesson of my life, that love without respect is not love at all. And that teaching that lesson, no matter how painful, is the greatest gift a mother can give. I am Hilda Morales. The housekeeper who became a landowner. The mother who became a matriarch. The woman who, at long last, wrote the final chapter of her own story. And it is a story of victory.